What's up, my friends, and welcome into today's episode of Forte Catholic. I'm so glad that you have found us here. Today, we have a great episode for you. Jon Blevins is the co-host today. We have some great conversations about how Jesus is the lion and the lamb at the same time. How can you be a lion and the lamb simultaneously? And if we're supposed to be like Christ, then I guess we have to figure that out too. We also talk about how there are some atheists and some pretty bad people who have written songs for church that we sing in Mass, and I have some mixed feelings about that ultimately end up pretty positive. And then we have a very special treat for you today. Someone who has been a huge influence on me and the show from the beginning joins the show. I finally get to talk to one of my heroes, Father Dave Dwyer, about his new book called Mass Class. We have a great conversation. He is so much fun. I hope that you guys enjoy this conversation. If you do, please hit subscribe wherever you are listening, and especially if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We got so much going on our YouTube channel. Go check it out, youtube.com/Forte Catholic. Enjoy today's show. What's up? And welcome to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Stroll. That is Jonathan Lene, bearded, the great Blevins. Hello, Jonathan.
I still love when you call me Lene.
Yeah,
and I think that your microphone may have just cut off your WhatsApp for the first time since I've done this with you.
It doesn't matter. That's just a Zoom feature. Everyone listening heard it perfectly.
Oh, that's good. I have to listen because it's one of my favorite parts.
That's very funny. It's funny because there have been times where, like, at like our big anniversary shows and stuff, where I've had the co-hosts yell the intro, and you've definitely cut out before. So it's one of the reasons why I had you start recording on your computer instead of just through Zoom, because you would
smart.
go, "What?" And welcome to Forte Catholic.
Yep.
It was very funny.
Lene.
We just watched you like silently scream. It was hilarious. John, I have a interesting place to start off today's show. We have a great show planned for you today. I didn't even tell you who the guest is. Our guest today, it's a pre-recorded interview, so I'm going to kick you out for it, but it's going to be great. Another reason you should listen to the episode. A person who has been somebody that I have looked to.
Are you going to give me clues so I can guess?
It's been somebody
person
that
you've looked.
It's a priest, someone that I have looked to for about 10 years on like a very influential in how I approach Catholic media. I've never spoken to him before, but I've listened to him quite a bit. He is a host on SiriusXM's The Catholic Channel. That show is named The Busted Halo Show.
The Busted Halo Show?
You've never heard of this priest?
Of course, Taylor, of course I've heard of this priest. You must be speaking of none other than Father Dave.
Oh, good Googling. I'm so proud of you.
I broke the rule and I used my keyboard instead of my phone too. Dang it.
Everyone heard it. I didn't edit it out.
What's his last name?
Father Dave Dwyer. He's huge, man. He's huge. I can't believe you've never heard of him. And the show's called Busted Halo. Kind of like he was one of the first people that I saw that it wasn't just like, oh, Catholic leader means perfect. Again, things have changed in the last 10 to 15 years. But when I was young and naive, I thought, Catholic leaders, my youth minister, the priest, I thought they were all like perfect and saintly. He was one of the first people, him and Lino Rulli on SiriusXM. We're like, I am a flawed human being trying my best to love God, serve God, and build up the kingdom. And I was like, I can do that. I can't be perfect, but I can do that. So I'm very excited to have him on the show. But before that, I had a moment that involved you. I had two moments that involved you over the last week or two.
Oh, no.
So I'm sitting at my computer and I'm editing something. I'm working, and my son had just gotten home from school. I think I got out of school, or it was the weekend. I can't remember. Either way, I'm sitting at my computer. My son's playing video games here in this room, and he runs over to me, and he says, "Dad, bearded Blevins just killed me." And I said, "Excuse me?" And he was playing Fortnite, right? So I'm like, so I text you immediately. All right, no, I call you immediately, and I watch you on your stream ignore my call. So then I text you, and I'm like, hey, I think you just killed my son in Fortnite. You're like, there's no way. It's some other guy named Bearded Blevins or some copycat or whatever. So a few hours later, I go and I watch the VOD on your channel, twitch.tv/beardedblevins. You can watch like all the streams. So I kind of made a mental note of what time it was, and I knew how long you had been streaming. So I knew it was about an hour and a half to 2 hours in, right? So we go and we're watching. So me and the whole family are sitting here watching you live 6 hours ago. And my son thought you killed you killed him. And sure enough, I'm watching the thing, and I'm like, if John killed my son, this is gonna be one of the most hilarious things, and random. Like the fact that like I've wanted to play Fortnite with you and you never let me. The fact that you were then playing with my son was just hilarious to me.
Can I just say too though that if he had killed me, like if that's how this would have gone, that would have been best case scenario. Like for you right. And your son. Worst case for me, like, oh, that'd be crazy.
I don't know. This might be worst. I think you're right. Worst case would be him killing you. This one wasn't much better because on watching the video on demand, what I saw, he thought you killed him. But a lot of things happened very quickly. We watched it and then we rewound it and we watched it a couple more times. He was in a fight with another person. And it got down to like they both had, so there's for those that don't play Fortnite, you have about 200 health, and as you're getting hit, your health's going down. My son died. The other person had about 9 health, and then Bearded Blevins flies in and just looks at that guy essentially, and that guy dies. So not only did you not kill my son, you third-partied my son. You took my son's kill, but ultimately, I thought you were the bad guy. You avenged my son's death.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I sent that other guy right back to the lobby.
It was very funny. It was just so wild. Of all the 100 people get dropped in completely randomly. You have to start the game around the same time. It was just so random that my son, who's 10 years old, playing on a PlayStation, you're playing on PC with an Xbox controller. Like the fact that y'all got lobbied up together was just, one, it was fascinating, but two, you always like to claim that you're really good at this game and that you have the best lobbies. I just want you to know there's a lot of 9-year-olds in your lobbies, buddy.
Oh, dude, 100%. If anything, it's a compliment to your son, because I get in games with the top players in the world. So that means that he is getting in some of those games too. And the skill-based matchmaking, like sometimes the time of day, there's just not enough people playing, and so you get pulled up into a lobby or something. But that's pretty cool that he was in there. That means he's getting pretty good.
He is. It's very funny because like there's season levels, right? So he plays way more than I do because I have a job and have to feed him and stuff. He just lets me feed him and plays video games, goes to school. So he's a higher level than me, and he like for the season. I mean, I've probably played 500 more hours over the course of the game's been out because he just started playing this summer. But it's funny when he thinks he's better than me. Every now and then we'll have a game where we have a couple. We've won 10, 15 games together, and there's like 1 or 2 that he got more damage than me, and he loves that. He loves that.
I remember like when I beat my dad every once in a while in Madden, and you love it. You lose most of the time, but you'll rub it in.
Right. So here I am. I initially thought you were the bad guy, and then you're a man of honor. You're a man of virtue. Then I'm on a walk because I do walks around my neighborhood. I try to go it every day, about 5 days a week. And I get a text from one of my former students who is now like a grown adult, like former student from like 6 years ago, right? So he's young, mid-20s. He's getting married. Me and my wife are the sponsor couple for him and his fiance as they're like getting married in the church. So like we've been hanging out a lot more because they asked us to be their sponsor couple. He texts me and sends me a little picture, a couple pictures and some screenshots and stuff. You just totally murdered him. He texted me. He said, your buddy just killed me. It says Bearded Blevins all over the thing. He's spectating, watching you play. And he said, there wasn't even a chance. Like he just ran up on me and I was dead. So I thought, like within a week, I thought you killed my son and then you killed my grown adult son.
Dude, what are the odds of that? That's crazy. Not only have to get in the same lobby, but then you have to like run into each other. That's crazy.
Like, the whole like, what are the odds that it happens once? It's like, okay, I can see it happening once, but twice in a week? It was unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that is pretty. And it's actually, I've been doing this full time for a year, streaming the game for 4.5 years. I've never knowingly killed someone who wasn't another streamer. Do you know what I mean? Like
Oh,
the people that I know in my life of youth ministry for years and all this stuff, never once has someone come in and been like that I know, and been like, you killed me. You know what I mean? The people who come in all the time, like every day, they're coming, oh, you just killed me. That's really cool. Hey, I just followed the channel. That's fine. That's normal. Streamers, you know who they are. But like 2 people that someone in my life knows really well, that had in 4.5 years happened in 1 week. We should have gone, you and I should have gone to the casino.
I know. Well, I think you did.
Yeah, well, I needed you there, so.
Oh, it wasn't good, huh?
It wasn't bad. It just, it was a whole experience.
Yeah, that's fun. I enjoyed following along with that trip. I heard there was that the Vegas Strip was a boulevard of broken dreams at one point.
That was, dude, all the memes didn't even do it justice. And I honestly, I'm so sad that wind is the reason that the festival got canceled on Saturday, because that means that even just walking from casino to casino where they have like these walkways, which you're only outside for 30 seconds, even that was so bad you could barely see in front of you, and the dust was so bad because of the wind. If it would have been, I don't know, I'm trying to think of anything else, excessive heat, and people were at least still walking outside, it would have been even worse, because you would have just been able to see all these people in black, super pale, just walking around looking like they hate themselves. It was rough. It was rough on Saturday for a lot of people.
Very funny. So this is for those of you who are for the unindoctrinated. This was the punk music festival is going to be like the biggest thing. All these old bands coming back, which is funny because it's like classic punk now because we're old, John.
Yeah.
Like this, like we're the age that our parents started listening to classic rock, which was just called rock whenever they were kids, So I think it's very funny that it was wind and not dust, because you went to a classic rock concert. I went to a classic rock concert when I was a child with my dad, whenever he was our age, and we heard a song, "Dust in the Wind." All we are is dust in the wind. So it all comes together. We're getting older. Hello.
And that sounds like a Catholic song.
Yeah, it does. From dust you came, and to dust you shall return. All you are is dust in the wind. Okay. So other than you being an emo person after losing money and losing a concert in Vegas and killing everyone that I know, let's dive into our show today.
Wait, did you know? You do know that I went to the concert Sunday and it was one of the greatest days of my life.
I do. I don't care about that. I only care about
that's fine. I just want to make sure that you know that it was an overall win situation for me.
Wind? It was an overall
win. It was a wind. Pretty sure there's a casino in Vegas called the Wynn Casino as well. That would have been even better.
WinStar.
WYNN, right? No?
Oh, is there?
I don't know. I barely left the place we lived that we were staying in.
That we lived. I lived there. It was a whole 2
I did.
days.
I lived there for 4 days and still couldn't sleep.
Well, okay, good. All right, I went to mass the other day. Let's get into our Catholic stuff, other than murder and.
Wait, I went to mass the other day too. Was your mass 30 minutes long?
No, it wasn't. But I complained to the priest that it wasn't. That was over 60.
Oh wow! See, very opposite Sundays.
We really did. Oh my gosh! I just went to stretch out my foot. I'm in this new recording studio, and all I did was stretch out my foot, and everything got dark because I blocked out the.
Wild.
What is this?
Dude,
called?
I've never my whole life never experienced. I've experienced fast masses. Never like this, bro. It was big, it's packed place, a lot of old people. Priest, Father, Holy Spirit, Amen. They'll be with you. Like just boom, the Eucharistic prayer was crazy. This is my buddy giving it for you. Ding, ding, ding. It was wild, dude. 30 minutes. It was almost like he had an appointment. Go on though. How was your mass?
What's funny is that we've been arguing for months on this show about the correct speed to listen to podcasts. That priest did mass at 2 times speed. Exactly.
100%. That's exactly what it sounded like.
So it sounds like you're not in the boat of the 2 times podcast list.
Yeah, we've talked about this. Yeah, I can't. I'm getting close to being able to do 1.25.
Oh my goodness. What I found a sweet spot, Apple. So I've been saying that most shows I do 1.5 or 2, depending on the show and the content and that sort of thing. But Apple did an update to the phone a few weeks ago. They have a 1.75 now. Sweet spot.
Sweet spot.
It doesn't feel like it's too fast. Oh, dude, it's perfect. But I'm glad that you went to a 2 times speed mass.
Yeah, it was wild.
I have questions about your mass now. I didn't know that we were going to talk about this, but I do have questions. So the priest was going quickly. Did he train everyone else to follow suit? Like, did the lectors read fast? Did the altar servers ring the bells fast?
So this is, again, the crazy thing. This is called I forget what the actual church was called, but it's the Shrine of something. It's right on the Strip. It is right across the street from like the biggest casinos there. And you would think that it would, I don't know, be a really good opportunity to just show a beautiful 1 hour mass, just English, fine, whatever. Just put incense, all that kind of stuff. Nah, dude, like there was no altar servers. There was one lector, there was one cantor, and an organ player. And when they did the psalm, which didn't feel rushed at all, the psalm and the readings didn't feel rushed. But the reason the psalm went by so fast was that they only sang the refrain. The reader who read the first and second reading also read the psalm. So, so it did go a little bit fast. And actually, I kind of liked that. I kind of liked that way they did that. But really, I think it was the Eucharistic prayer. It was from the time that the homily ended. It was I'm sorry. It was the time the gospel ended until the end of Mass where the priest is in control of all of it, where it just flew. It flew. And I've never heard of. I wish I recorded it. And you know what? They do record it. So I'm going to go look for it. And maybe I'll try to send it to you. And you can plug it in here. I've never heard him, a priest, sing the Eucharistic prayer the way he sang it. Ever. I think he made it up. It's his own thing. But he was just... But like the drawn out Kermit amen and a drawn out beginning too. To his holy venerable hands, and then just keeps going. It was just very weird. And it did not feel reverent, but it didn't feel irreverent. It was very interesting. It really felt like just 2 times speed. That's crazy.
That's very funny. So what I want is if you send me a clip of that, and then I'll put it on here, and then people will hear it. The correct people listening to this podcast will hear it at 4 times speed.
Oh yeah, you won't be able to hear anything.
That's great. So it's funny. We have a young associate pastor at our parish who was acting as the pastor for 3 to 4 months as our pastor is taking his well-deserved sabbatical after 17 years of service. He's supposed to take it every 7. They let him do it after 17. So he's in the Holy Land. Our young associate pastor he's our age, or he's my age. You're super old. He's a good guy, and but it's fun though. It's kind of like with Father Anthony, like being my age, I get to mess with him, right? So after every Mass, I'm like, just like I do with you guys, I'll say something genuine and then immediately ruin it with a diss, right? Like he knows that like I'm a Catholic speaker that gets booked to speak, and I have the show. Like I'm very, every now and then I'm good at the talkie, right? But so when I would compliment it, I was like, your homily was really good. Like I could tell that it meant something, right? He probably has a bunch of people come up to him and say, hey, that homily was good. But it didn't matter. But then I was also like, it did go 7 minutes over. And he just like threw up his hands, like,
yeah.
But this wasn't the Mass. I went to a different Mass a few weeks ago, and I've been waiting for the right time to talk about this, and I feel like you're the perfect person to talk to this about. So I was at a different church for Mass, and this song started playing that I immediately have incredible emotional connection to, right? So the song is called Good to Me by Audrey Assad. And so immediately, like I was at the album launch of that show. The first time that she ever played it for a public audience, I was there. I was there with my teens. I brought my teens when I was a youth minister to it. That song was playing when my daughter, who is now 7, was born on the side of the road. That song was playing as like my wife birthed her, and I caught her on this like in the car.
How have you never told me this story? This is amazing.
It's on the podcast, John. If you listen to the podcast, you would know anything about me.
I will continue to affirm you that I've listened to your podcast more than any other podcast in the history of the world, except for Crime Junkies. Keep going.
Yeah. Okay. That was a good me. You affirmed me and then immediately dissed me. That was very good. That was very good. But that song was playing. My wife had like a birthing playlist. It just so happened that this song was on while we're driving on the highway in the middle of nowhere. She's giving birth. I run over, and catch the baby, right? That song is playing as I'm holding my daughter for the first time. It's in January. It's freezing cold. I'm holding her in this miracle of a thing that I know nothing about science, and being a doctor, I should not be around medical situations. The fact that everything was okay and that she was healthy, it just felt like a miracle, right? Because like if anything would have gone wrong, it would have really gone wrong because I don't know anything, right? So I'm holding her, and I'm holding her like in the heater of the car because and this song just keeps playing. You are good to me. You are good to me. And it's just like I just have this incredible emotional connection to it, right? But if anybody follows the internet, if you've been on the internet the last few years, you know that Audrey is now an atheist and pretty far from Catholicism, right? So like I'm having all these mixed emotions. Immediately this rush of like, man, like God is good, God has really helped me, but then like this incredible sadness and kind of frustration that like, why are we playing this atheist song at mass, right? And then by the end of the song, it took about 4 or 5 minutes, this other rush of emotion of, man, it's actually kind of a cool thing that God is still using something from a person who was Catholic, who is now atheist, to help other people come to Christ now. So I had this wide span of emotions. So what do you think about the scenario I found myself in at Mass the other day?
Wow. I want to, well, so real quick, how did you like, where did you, that's where you ended up? You ended up during that mass thinking, oh, it's a good thing?
Yeah, so where I ended was, I'm not an atheist, and I don't think I'm gonna go down that path. It's not in the plans, right? But like, it was like imperfect, broken people who can still do good things for the kingdom and build up the kingdom, even through our our frustrations, our brokenness, our imperfections. And I was like, I left it with hope that like, despite my failings, that like, when I go and give a talk, that people can grow closer to Christ. Whenever people listen to the show, that they can be encouraged and have a good time and also grow in their relationship with God and the church. So like, that's how I left it. Was like, like I literally ran, the 4 emotions that I can have as a man, as a millennial man, I had them within like 5 minutes of this song playing.
Yeah, that's, it's funny because normally when you and I talk about stuff like this, where there's a chance for optimism and a chance for pessimism, the roles are reversed. Where I'm like, well, Taylor, isn't that? But I think the way you're looking at that is the correct way to look at it. I have not found myself able to do that yet with people that inspired me in big ways earlier in life, who then have made different decisions. Instead, my reaction is just like sadness, and like I'll pray for them. Like, it's not anger. It isn't anger because. And if there's a lesson for me there, it's just always that never put our hope in people.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Because people are always going to let you down, no matter who it is, even your friends. But like, I think of Matt Maher. Like, if Matt Maher left the church, I'd be a mess. I really would, because I feel like if there's one person that I'm not very, very, very close with that has had an impact on my faith life for the last, how old am I? I'm 35 now. For the last 20 years, it's been him. Like, he dated my cousin. So like, I got to go to St. Tim's when he was just like the youth ministry music guy at St. Tim's.
The fact that you still like him after he dated your cousin and did not marry her is a really cool thing.
Yeah. And like, he talked to me, and I went to the NCYC one time for the first time that I was there, and it was the first time he was there, and nobody was talking to him because nobody knew who he was. And then all of a sudden he's on the main stage, and I loved Set Me as a Seal. And I was like, if he plays that song, like, God wants me at this conference. It was like this first moment I had.
Is love,
yes, dude. And that song, that doesn't have anything. That's not an adoration song.
Oh, absolutely not. It's a love song that I sang to my wife when I surprised her in college. We've talked about
yes. and so, but he played it, and I was like, oh my gosh, God's real and he loves me. And then from that moment, I've, being in ministry, as you have last, for me, 15 years, you just see him at different points, at different conferences, different events. And like, we grew up together. Like, I got married and had kids, and he's like, I need to get married. I feel like God has a plan for me. And then he gets married and has kids. It's just, we've been on the same journey, and I've been really inspired that he's been able to grow.
So if he left, hair. I got gray hair.
Yeah. And so if he left, like, he's one of the only people in the church left that if he left, like, I don't put my hope in people, but I still have a lot of hope in him. But then Audrey's one of those people too. Like, it hurt, man, because she would had such an impact on so many of the young females that, and males, but like especially females in youth ministry, being one of the first speakers or musicians to open up about like all the different struggles that she had. I feel like was a great gateway to get a lot of the young ladies to open up about their stuff to the counselors, to priests, all that stuff. And so it really hurt me when she left, and just broke my heart. So I think your way of looking at it is much healthier than my way, but it's very sad.
Yeah, I mean if I'm like, that's where I've been for years since she left, is a mixture of anger and frustration and sadness, and like a little bit of like kind of scared of it, right? Because like, if she can fall, like any of us can, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So like, that's the feeling where I came into Matt. I think the thing that kind of quote unquote saved me in it or like helped me get there quicker is just such the positive emotional connection I have because of my daughter, right? Like that's a moment that can never be ruined, right? So I made that transition kind of like from where you're saying that you are, which is where I've been for the whole time since she went off the deep end. And finally it switched. It didn't switch from like anger and sadness. It was just like on top of it was laid this like hope of like kind of the whole like looking in the mirror thing. It's like I have some similarities to her. Just because we all have similarities to broken people because we're all broken people. So it just gave me hope that like, 10 years from now, somebody can listen to a podcast or listen to a talk or something and be inspired, encouraged, or helped or whatever, even when it was, despite all of my sins and my weakness, whether that's 10 years from now or tomorrow, they're listening to this or whatever. Right. So, it was like so that stuff's still there. It's not like, oh, God completely healed me. It was just like a new perspective that was given in Mass.
No, but I appreciate that because I think I'm going to start trying to look into that with a little more of a grateful heart because I love her music, dude. Like, I don't know if there's a better Catholic musician outside of maybe Matt Maher in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So I mean, she's restless, helped me fall in love with God in any way, but also like St. Augustine. And she's just her whole album on the saints. I mean, where she just basically like took a different saint and made a song about each one was just beautiful. Still is.
Yeah. I love it. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to go and take a break from John, and I'm going to have a conversation with Father
Dave Dwyer.
Yeah, I am from the Busted
Halo.
It's just a dream come true for me. I hope that you guys enjoy the conversation. And John will join me again for our final segment of the day. Don't go anywhere. We are headed to Rome, and we would like for you to come with us. Father Anthony and I are leading a Forte Catholic trip to some of the holiest sites in Italy. We're going to Rome, the Vatican, Assisi, and beautiful Tuscany. We hope that you will consider joining us. Head on over to fortecatholic.com/travel right now. There you'll find all that you need to know about the trip, how you can sign up. We hope that you will sign up soon to join us for this incredible trip, our first ever pilgrimage through Forte Catholic. And it's just going to be a blast as we go to these holy sites. We eat great food, we drink, we have fun, record some live shows while we're there. We hope that you'll join us, fortecatholic.com/travel today to get all the info. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am still Taylor Schroll, and I am joined by a priest that I've looked up to from afar for a very long time, and now I get to look directly at him, and maybe not as much up to him as we welcome him to the show.
Not at the end of this
Father
interview.
Dave Dwyer. Yeah, exactly.
I just stepped on my own intro. Rule number 1 of being a guest, let the host introduce you.
No, it's okay. I totally understand. You're used to hosting. You host a show all the time.
That's what's been weird about this, Taylor, is that for 16 years, I've been hosting the Busted Halo show on SiriusXM. We put up podcasts of it as well. And obviously, a lot of our guests would have something to talk about. Oftentimes, they have a book. So I've been doing this 5 days a week. And yet, when you're on the other side of the mic, it is a little different. Wait, they're going to ask me questions about my book. I better review my own work so that I can answer the questions.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you have two things going for like where I can't be mad at you. One, you host a show that's way more popular than this one. And two, why would a priest ever give power to a layperson? I mean, come on.
We want to empower. We must empower.
So, like you mentioned with the Busted Halo show, I've known of that show for about a decade now, and I've been listening to that, and Lena Ruli's The Catholic Guy show, and y'all do a lot of stuff together. Ironically enough, I got the email from your publicist about this book that we'll be talking about throughout this interview. I got the email while I was listening to a show that was Busted Halo and The Catholic Guy show together from your Germany pilgrimage.
Wow.
I was literally listening to it as I got the email. And it sounds like I'm lying. I'm not.
No,
I don't have
you.
to go to confession with you. It's great.
It's for one thing, it's a small Catholic world that we have here, and also, the Holy Spirit is up there, kind of putting things together that sometimes we don't notice right at first. Then you go,
right.
Aha.
Right. So I've known you as a host of the show for a long time. I knew that you were a Paulist, but I didn't know your title with the Paulist. Like I always thought, like Paulist priest. And, like director and host of the Busted Halo show, right? But what I didn't know is that until we started emailing back and forth to set this up, you have a title with the Paulist that I've never heard before. You are a Paulist friar, Paulist priest, and the first consultor. That sounds so fancy. What does a first consultor do?
It is so not fancy, Taylor. and I'm going to give you a little bit of a break that you hadn't, quote unquote, noticed it all these years, because I've only had that title since June 7th of this year. So it's a new title. My co-host on the radio show, Brett Siddell, after I started telling people that I have a new job, he said, don't tell people you have a new job. You have an additional job, because I haven't let any of the other job go as executive director of Busted Halo Ministries, which is, in addition to the radio show, we reach out, as you do, through a lot of social media and website articles and videos. I had somebody come up to me at Sunday Mass this weekend. I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and they said, "You're Father Dave. We use your videos for our confirmation class." And I'm like, boy, I shot those when I was a lot younger. I hope I still hope it holds up. But First Consultor is part of our 3-person leadership team for the Paulist community. We have a president and a vice president. Most people have heard of those 2 terms. The third guy, for some reason, and it's in the weeds and it's Catholic inside baseball, we call my position the first consultor. Essentially, it's because the consultors are our general counsel, which essentially would be like a board of directors. And before any of them are elected, I get appointed by the president. So technically, I'm the first one that takes his seat on the council. But also in our the way we do it is that general counsel, kind of like a board of directors for a nonprofit or a corporation, would get together 4 or so times a year. According to our Constitution, there's certain things that those people have to ratify. The 3 of us, though, essentially are running our community full time the whole rest of the year. So I'm on a 3-person leadership team, and we decided just to kind of add that to my plate and see if I can keep doing all the other stuff too. So I'll let you know, Taylor. The jury's still out on that one.
It's kind of funny. Like the title makes more sense to me now that you've explained it.
All right.
But it's also kind of funny where it's like, I kind of thought it was like a Catholic version of president and vice president.
Yeah.
Then you told me that there is a president and vice president. So what's wrong with the vice president that the president doesn't want to consult him first?
No, he
He just skips over him and goes to you.
I think because we travel so much, and sure, there's Zoom and there's email, but really he consults whichever one of us he sees first.
Yeah, whoever's closer. That's very funny. So
In
I
fact,
learned something.
The guy who is
Yeah, go
who's now the vice president, had the job the title anyway, that I had for the last 8 years. And he introduces to himself to people and says, well, I'm really doing exactly the same thing, but now I have a title that people can understand.
Right.
So maybe that someday that'll be me, but maybe not. I don't know.
Well, one of the titles of yours that I do understand is the executive director of Busted Halo, and I've like I mentioned, my primary connection to you was through the Busted Halo show on SiriusXM, and I remember hearing about it. Probably around a decade-ish ago. I can't remember exactly. But I remember hearing it, and I was like, Busted Halo, like that must be like, some guy that used to be Catholic and now isn't or whatever. And I was like, oh, it's a Catholic priest. Like it went from a, oh no, to a, oh, this is intriguing, right? So why Busted Halo? Why is your Halo busted, and why name a ministry that?
Well, first of all, one does need to be careful when typing into the search engine, because Broken Halo is something more along the lines of what you were thinking that it is.
Oh, no, really? Okay.
So sometimes people come up to me and go, oh, you're that Broken Halo guy. I'm like, no, that's not me.
Not today. That was this weekend, but that's a whole other thing.
The history of the name, which I didn't have anything to do with, I was inserted after the name was firmly planted. And is the Paulist Fathers. You may be aware, Taylor, that in the late 90s, the U.S. bishops came out with a document on young adult ministry, ministering to those in their 20s and 30s, and essentially saw that back then. It was 1996 was the document called Sons and Daughters of the Light. And at that point, and we've come a long way since then, at that point, it was like, this is kind of we're at an urgency level now in terms of being able to connect with and reach out to young adults in the Catholic Church here in our country. We need to do something about this. That document talked about essentially like rolling out the red carpet, making a preferential option for ministry to young adults. And yet, as is the bishop's place, they kind of identify a need, an issue, a problem. They'll say, we should do this. but they don't, and it's not even really their job to exactly execute it and figure out how to do it. Religious communities like the Paulist Fathers that I belong to will sometimes take up the reins. And so at that point, we said, you know what? They're asking Catholics to figure out how to reach young adults. We should dedicate some of our time and resources to that. So they assigned one of my predecessors and hired a layperson, Taylor. We do empower lay people. It was both of us. So it was a Paulist father and a layperson who began what at the time was called Paulist Young Adult Ministries, kind of a generic term. And this was 1999, 2000. And so they sat down with groups of young adults, almost like focus groups, except not like behind a two-way mirror and that sort of thing, but just kind of collecting, the general opinions of folks out there, both churchgoers and not. And one of the things we asked is, what should we do? And they said, well, you need a website. This was before a lot of social media. So that was the new cutting edge stuff, website. So we decided to launch a website to reach out to young adults. And then when we were testing the name and getting ideas for the name, it was actually one of these young adult focus groups that came up with the name. The idea being that none of us are perfect. We say this in the opening of the show, Taylor, so you're probably familiar with this. We're not saints yet. None of us are perfect. We're all on a journey towards God, but God is calling us forward anyway. So it's so neither extreme, even though we live in a culture of extremes these days, neither extreme is right. We're not saints yet. We don't have the halo. Technically, according to the Catholic Church, we can't be saints until we die. So none of us are saints. But the other extreme is also problematic. Like, oh, never me. If I ever went to church, the walls would crumble down. No, we're called to be saints in the making, if you will, acknowledging that all of our halos are not fully intact yet, and they need to be polished up. They need to be mended. And by the time we get into God's heavenly kingdom, they will be. But for now, they're all kind of busted. And what the young adults brought to that was that acknowledging that we are an imperfect community is somewhat attractive, as opposed to sometimes the church will take the stance that, as Pope Francis keeps reiterating, we're not like this country club for perfect people. It's more like we're a field hospital. So Busted Halo, I would say that name, and then as our voice and our style evolved over the years, I would say falls in the line of that. We acknowledge our imperfections, all of ours, yours and mine, the church in general, but also that it's not sufficient to leave it there and say, we're broken, we're imperfect, oh well, forget church. That we are being called by God to be saints in the making.
Yeah, and I remember it vividly. It was that time around 10 years ago where I found your show and I found the Catholic Guy show, and both of those, I was in a time where I was like, I thought that every priest and every youth minister I had and every CCE teacher I had and every Catholic leader was perfect and perfectly holy. So I saw there was this disconnect where I'm like, I know I'm not, and I can never be that. And it was discouraging more than encouraging. And then I saw people like you and Busted Halo and Lino and kind of from there, some other people where I'm like, oh, like the goal is more like, I see that person, they're not perfect, but they're striving for holiness. I can do that. That was something that I could do. And it was hugely impactful for me as a Catholic, as in my spirituality, but also in what I ended up doing. Like I'm doing like a lot of my method came from seeing people like you guys do that. So it's just kind of cool to finally talk to you, because it's just like, you've been an influence on me for over 10 years and without even knowing.
Well,
it.
Apparently we got the name right, because what you just described is exactly the whole point.
Right. It worked. You did good.
Okay.
That focus,
right. Well, thanks.
focus group did good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, see you later. Father Dave Dwyer has left the building. So I have another personal question for you, since I kind of stole that part from your personal life and made it my whole personal life. Another thing about you is that you've been working in media for a long time, in Catholic media for quite some time, but even before that, you worked at Comedy Central and MTV, and then the whole reason you're here is that you wrote this book. And here I am as somebody who loves audio and video and giving talks and doing podcasts and radio and that sort of thing. Would never think to write a book, because it's just not like where I thought I was called. And here you are, a few years ahead of me. Let's just say 2 years ahead of me. A few years ahead of me. So why'd you finally write a book after years and years of success in, other areas?
Well, Taylor, like you, I also did not feel called to write a book. So when I, all those years ago in 1999, when I made my final profession, or other communities would call it final vows or perpetual vows, to the Paulist Fathers, I promised to be part of the team. This, Taylor,
That's when you were the last consultant.
Exactly right. That's when I was the last consultant. This book writing is an example of taking one for the team.
Oh, gotcha. I see.
We have the oldest independent Catholic publishing company in the United States. Paulist Press was founded by our founder of the Paulist community, Father Isaac Hecker, in the late 1800s. We've had first it was what you might call tracts or pamphlets to kind of evangelize people. Then they moved into the first Catholic magazine in the United States called the Catholic World, and it eventually evolved into a publishing company publishing books. I don't know if you've looked around, Taylor, lately. Not as many people buying books lately. Also, not as many people practicing the Catholic faith lately. So you get those two, that little Venn diagram. And an independent Catholic book publishing company struggles to make ends meet. So my brothers have been, I'm going to say for 10 years, just nudging me and go, come on, you got to write a book. You got a big audience with the radio show. They'll love it. They'll buy them. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter. You're please write a book. And then it's when I kept saying, no, it's not my gift. And it still is not my gift. But so they were saying, okay, well.
What do you mean? You're great. We got to sell the books. It's tremendous.
Well, but you have all this great content, just like you're saying, Taylor. I mean, I have, as you know, I've been in media, working in media. You may not know that even prior to MTV and Comedy Central, I was playing with a cassette tape recorder when I was 6, pretending I was a radio host. So this is, I've been doing this. I can do this. I think I do it okay, but never really saw myself as a writer. So Paulist Press says, okay, how about this? You've been doing the show all these years. You answer these questions of faith. There's all that content out there. And hey, guess what? You recorded it. So what we'll do is we'll just go back into the archives of all your old radio shows. You don't have to do it. You don't have to lift a finger. We'll just go back into the archives of all these radio shows. We decided, at least I was at a meeting where we decided, well, I take questions on a lot of different topics, but every Wednesday, actually, since we went on the air, we used to have something like a different theme every day of the week, just to kind of, when you're first starting, as I'm sure you know, when you're first starting in podcasting or radio, the first thing you think is, oh my gosh, how are we going to fill all that time? And in this case, every day. In this case, it was 3 hours every day. So It was sort of like, whoa. So one of the things that helps with that from a production standpoint is that you can hang something on every day of the week. So when you roll into the office on Wednesday and say, what are we going to talk about for 3 hours tonight? Oh, we have a theme every Wednesday. So Wednesdays, we called Mass Class Wednesday. We figured that Mass is almost assuredly the most common experience that we have together as Catholics. And Mass is old and complex, and there's a lot of rituals, and it's done in a lot of different ways in different places. So people will probably have questions about Mass. Right, and so we've been answering questions about the Mass for 16 years on the radio. So Paulist Press says, all right, we'll go back in the archives. Don't worry about it. We'll hire some editors and some assistants. They'll transcribe it, and we'll just put it into chapters. Then we'll just, we'll put your name on it. I'm like, whoa, that sounds good. It sounds almost a little lacking in integrity, but it might be like one of those where a big celebrity writes a book and then it says on the really fine print, and also this guy who actually really wrote it. But here's the big name. So that was the idea. So that was a great sounding idea. That's how they lured me in, Taylor. And then they presented me with this manuscript, and I'm like, is that what I sound like on the air? This will not do. So essentially, I rewrote the whole thing from scratch. I mean, it is the questions that I've answered, but the rewriting was more in the fact that, as you can tell now, like if we just, we're rolling tape. If we send this into a transcription thing, it doesn't look pretty. It's not nice grammar. It's not nice poetic style. So I kind of rewrote things so that they'd be, more pleasing to the eye when reading in book form. Ooh, they made it a hardcover even. And so that allowed me to also to find research, not footnotes per se, but to actually substantiate my answers in the teaching of the church with the primary sources. I decided not to make it really overly academic, not just because I didn't feel like writing a book, but because I wanted it to also have a little bit of the feel of me answering questions on the air. And when I'm in the studio, I don't have a vast theological library. I have I try to use sparingly what we refer to on the Busted Halo show as Our Lady of Wikipedia. Don't want to use her all that often. But in the studio, I have the Roman Missal, which is the big prayer book that we pray out of, and the instruction of the Roman Missal, which kind of tells you the why behind the what is part of that book. I have the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and I have a Bible. I have those three things in the studio with me. If I have to, somebody calls with a question, I go, okay, well, let me do my best to kind of give you a good answer. So I decided only to use those three as the primary sources when citing things in the book. But I thought it would be helpful if people did want to find out some more. Here's a catechism reference. If you want to go find the Roman Missal online, which you can, you don't have to buy any of these things. You can find the Bible online. So I figured if people wanted to do a little more, they want to dive a little deeper, I could at least give them some references, which I don't typically do when I'm speaking extemporaneously on the air. And therefore, we had to do when I say me, I had to do a little more work on this book after we had that grand idea that all we'd have to do is transcribe the audio tapes. It didn't quite work out that way. So in answer to your question, what made me decide to write a book? Being a member of a community and wanting to be a good guy.
It's very fun. I can't wait to go back and watch my face and the excitement in my, I would just imagine the excitement on my face when you were saying that all you had to do to write a book is just go back and look at the transcripts of what I've said on previous podcasts for the last 7 years. And then I got all excited, and then you said, and then that didn't work, and I had to do work. It's like, dang it, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, Taylor, what I've learned in this life, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah. I was like, there's no way he's just revealing on this show that he didn't write the book. And sure enough, you did write the book. So here's what I want to do. We're getting to the end of our time. The book is called The Mass Class from the Paulist Friars. I would like to Paulist Fathers.
Yeah,
sorry. I didn't consult the right person. I apologize. I want to give people a taste. I want to ask you two questions about the Mass before we end our time.
Yep.
So the first one being is I like secrets. And one of the things that you talk about in the book is there are some secret prayers that the priest prays that he typically doesn't pray out loud. So it's a secret just for the priest. And I'm a layperson. I want to know. So what are these secret prayers?
Well, it's interesting that, I remember when this call came in, actually. Some of them I do stick out in my memory. I couldn't tell you exactly what year or, where on the road the person was driving or whatever. But I do remember this because I remember that this is like a lot of the questions I get. I'm like, I didn't realize how that part of the Mass would be perceived, and I never would have thought of that. And it's interesting because the priest is kind of mumbling, or maybe you see just his lips moving, or maybe whispering, or whatever, that people could perceive. What's he doing there? The word in Latin is in fact secreto. Secret. But what it really translates into, and when you see it in Italian, in fact, in the Roman Missal, it says in a sottovoce, in a soft voice, or a low voice. So the priest says this, and usually in English we translate it to inaudibly, but the priest is saying it, praying it. So it's somewhere between strictly, just completely in my head, like, what am I thinking about Taylor right now?
Don't say that, please.
So it's somewhere between that and, sort of like, cheeseburger, just sort of a low rumble or whatever. But the reason for that is what's more interesting. They're not intended, certainly not intended to be secret. It's not any kind of an incantation that the unlearned people can't know about. It's not like you all out there haven't reached you couldn't possibly handle what these words are, you lay people. No, it's because the vast majority of the words that come out of the priest's mouth during the course of the Mass are him acting as a representative, praying on behalf of the people that are gathered there to God. And because he is the president or presider, the idea is he's leading the people, and yet in many ways they are our prayers. And so very often, even though the priest is saying it, we're hearing first person plural. We're we and us in a lot of the praying. So the idea is, just like if you went to anything else, if you went to like a big rally, like a big political rally, the person up in the front would be on a microphone and people could hear what they're saying. The quote secreto prayers, or the sottovoce prayers, are very few times throughout the Mass when the priest prays a private prayer about himself. So both of them really are about his own worthiness. So one of them is before proclaiming the gospel and praying that, even though I've been a sinful person this week, Lord, it's only you that could deem me worthy to proclaim your word. And then as we're doing what we call the lavabo, which is the little washing of the hands, this turned into a little bit more of a demonstrative ritual during the COVID. I don't know if you noticed. There was like all kinds of Purell, and there was like hoses But, for centuries, it's been like dipping a little, hands in a little water or whatever. And it's not intended to, it wasn't until COVID, but it's not intended to really be a thorough hand washing. Ideally, that should happen prior to celebrating Mass.
Right.
And, if you need the Purell during, that's fine. But it's a ritual that indicates the cleansing that we all get at baptism and acknowledging that the priest, right before the important part of the Mass, right before praying the words of Jesus and being sort of a conduit of the grace of the Holy Spirit, the priest acknowledges that he is a sinner and needs to be cleansed from that sin. So that little prayer that's happening during the lavabo, Lord, wash me of my iniquity, cleanse me of my sin. Sometimes you hear that because sometimes the priest will, if there's not music, will say these things loud enough to be heard. And these days we have a mic. Back in the day when they invented sotto voce, it was because there was no mic, and the rest of the Mass, he's like, "In nomine Patris Spiritus," and then the rest of it's like, I got to get my voice a little break here.
Just a vocal break.
Yeah, just praying for myself. They don't need to really hear that. But it's not secret in the sense that, you guys can't handle it, but it's really because all the other words the priest is saying is for the benefit of the people, and those words, those prayers are just praying to God for me. Lord, I need help to cleanse me of my sins. Now I'll get back to being, in charge with everybody.
It's really cool because one of the parts of the Mass that I've been focused on a lot recently is what we all say is the Lord, I'm not worthy you should enter under my roof, but only say the word, my soul shall be healed. That's essentially the same thing that the lay people are saying is what you're saying that the priest is saying before the gospel and communion of like, look, I'm not worthy for this, but you have made me worthy. That's just a really cool connection between what the priest is doing and what the congregation is doing. So my final question is you've been doing this segment on the show for years. You wrote the book Mass Class. You've been answering questions about the Mass for years, and what your publicist wants me to ask is what's the most common question. But I'm a rebel. I don't want to know the most common question. I want to know the most like random, off the wall, strange question that you've ever been asked about the Mass.
Well, I'll answer that by saying one that would never have occurred to me that was kind of like a, wow, like where did that come from? So it is kind of off the wall. And it's on the phrase that you just used. So it's the part of the Mass that you've been focusing on, that it never would have occurred to me to ask that, but several people over the years have taken that phrase that you just said, Lord, I'm not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word and my soul shall be healed. They go, okay, what's the word?
Yeah. Doritos.
So in the book, I explained that it's a turn of phrase that works in English and apparently it worked in Aramaic. And when, Matthew and Luke wrote it down, it worked in Greek too, that we would say if a friend is in trouble, let's say a friend just lost a parent or something, you would probably express something like, if there's anything you need, if you just don't feel like cooking for the kids tonight, just say the word and I'll be there. It's a turn of phrase that we in fact use. And yet when we hear it in the Mass, we go, oh, wait, that's what that means? Right. So essentially it means, and I go into a little more detail in the book, that in other words, if you're expressing to that friend, like you don't have to justify it. You don't have to pay me back for it. This is a complete gift of grace that we don't have to go through all that. So we're saying that we're saying that, if I had to describe how I would need to be healed or if I would have to work my salvation off, it would never work. But I know that I'm not worthy and just speak the word. It also scripturally comes from a scene that is somewhat familiar because in the same way, the same great faith, the centurion that approaches Jesus that says, my daughter's sick over at my house a couple of miles away. And Jesus is like, all right, guys, fellas, let's go. And he's like, no. And he says, really, that whole, those two halves of that phrase, I'm not worthy that you, someone so great, should make a trek all the way to my house. But I have such faith in you that I know that standing here, all you need to do is say she is healed, and I believe that she is. And Jesus says, this guy has faith. And the scripture says, and at the moment, his daughter was healed. So again, we're expressing that faith. I have such faith in God that even though examining my heart and knowing that all my sins, and if I was in a court of law, they would give me a sentence and I'd have to work this off on a chain gang or many years behind bars, I know that for God merely says, welcome. I love you. you are mine. Whatever that word is, we have faith that it's just at God saying that invitation, come, follow me, that is what heals us.
Now, for the rest of my life, this is just how my brain works. It's not your fault at all. It's just how my brain works with Scripture. For the rest of my life, when I hear the story of that centurion, I'm gonna imagine Jesus in a sotto voce voice saying the word Doritos, and that's what heals that little girl.
Cheeseburger, Doritos.
Yeah, cheeseburger. It's so funny that was that was your answer to the question. That off the wall question, because my dad's very quiet. And we were sitting at Christmas Mass this past Christmas. We drove over to their house. We went to Mass with them, and he leaned over and whispered to me that question. I was like, "What? Like, what are you talking about?" So it's perfect that those kinds of questions are answered for everybody in the book, whether it's the secret little things or the most popular
They're
questions
answered in the book
Mass
called
Class.
Mass Class, Your Questions Answered, available from paulspress.com.
By Father Dave Dwyer, and not Father Dave Dwyer by editors from his show.
No, I actually did it. Yep, I will not do it again anytime soon, Taylor. I'll tell you that.
Okay, so where's best place for them to buy it?
paulspress.com. I mean, you certainly can go to Amazon. It's easy. Your information's all in there. And Amazon takes a little chunk. Paul's Press gets a little more if you buy it from Paul's Press. But also, I understand it comes together on Tuesday with all your other soap and everything else. So that's fine. And actually, if you do buy it on Amazon, if you review it, then more people see it. They actually buy more copies. So Amazon, it's a necessary evil. So either way, either on Amazon, just search for Mass Class. It was number one in a couple of their categories when it first came out. So it does, when you search for it, it does show up. So feel free.
It's perfect. That's perfect. I'm excited. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Guys, go buy the book, Mass Class, on Paul's Press or on Amazon. Leave a review. You could follow Dave Dwyer on all the social medias. Connect with him on Busted Halo Show every day on SiriusXM. Or if you're cheap like me, you can get the free podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Anything else you want to close us with, Father?
I think you did. That whole little tale there was perfect.
We did it. Well, Father Dave, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
And yeah, absolutely. Everybody listening, don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Although it'll be a little sad because Father Dave won't be with us, but we are going to continue the show. Don't go anywhere. Last week, we had Catholic comic creator Andy Shaggy Cordy on the show to talk about something that he's doing this November called Nov Arts Ordo. This is a challenge for comic creators and artists throughout the entire month, and it's all centered around creating art every single day or every week, if you can't do every day, around the saints. And so it's just really cool to see somebody like him, who is a professional comic creator, do things. He's made saint cards for us. He's made incredible drawings. You can follow all of this on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Andy Shaggy Cordy, Korty. The links are down in the description. Check it out. I know my daughter is a big artist, so she's going to be participating in the Nov Arts Ordo Challenge. We hope that you guys will give Andy a follow. Check out all of the art that he is making and that other people are creating as well. Check it out once again at Andy Shaggy Cordy on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll, rejoined by Jonathan Bearded Lene Blevins. John, we both talk off camera quite a bit about our gambling. We both love to gamble on sports. You just got back from Vegas. I would have loved to have been in Vegas. I just love gambling, right? And the Catholic Church says that as long as it's, extra money and entertainment money and not your mortgage or to feed your kids, then it's perfectly fine. Go have some fun, right? But I could tell that you just got back from Vegas because I offered you something in between segments. I said, here are two segments that I have planned. And we could do either one. And like how this works is almost always have bonus segments ready to go, right? Because if I'm always constantly preparing for this week's show, next week's show, the next week's show, that sort of thing. So I have two, and you liked both of them, and you couldn't decide. So what was your solution for how we should decide?
Sometimes I do this, Taylor, and more often than I like to admit, I flip a coin.
We did.
Let's let fate decide.
So we let fate decide. So you'll get. We flipped a coin. Heads won. So don't worry, guys. It's not like it's going to be a mystery. You just have to wait another week to hear tails because I'll do it next week with Father Anthony. So
perfect.
But what I'm going to be doing with John is what ended up being the heads answer. So I had this thing the other day where it has often confused me how Jesus has said that he is different things at the same time that seem contradictory. For example, Jesus has said, I am the gate. I am the way. He's also said he is the gatekeeper. He also said he's the lamb. And he also has said that he's the shepherd. That's all the characters in that story.
All the characters.
So I get confused. I'm like, are you the shepherd? Are you the gate? Are you the door? Are you the sheep? Are you the like, I don't know what you mean, right? And then I heard, I've been, C.S. Lewis has been on the mind a lot. I edited a C.S. Lewis podcast, and they were talking about, Chronicles of Narnia. And so the lion, Aslan. The lion and the lamb have been on my mind quite a bit. There's a bunch of songs and Christian hymns about.
What's the first one that comes to your mind, though?
The lion and the lamb, and every knee will bow before him. What's yours?
Oh yeah, same one. Wait.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep. Same.
I was about to say, do you know another one?
No, that one for sure.
The Lion of Judah. So, I was thinking about it. I was like, you can't get more opposite, right? The lion will lay down with the lamb. Like, Jesus is the Lamb of God, but he's also the Lion of Judah. And I was like, how can he be both of those things? So I brought it to my best theologian friend. His name is Jonathan Blevins, live here on the show. How can Jesus be both the lion and the lamb?
Man, I mean, I guess I know we're doing theology here, Taylor.
I mean, that's what the third segment's for, baby. We get serious towards the end.
I know, I do like that. Well, I mean, so you look at Jesus as the Lamb of God. He's a sacrificial lamb, right? Which was the thing that every Jew would have known about for sure throughout his entire life. And then he made the final sacrifice of all and became the ultimate Lamb of God, right? The new covenant that it wouldn't have to be another one. And so that in that way we call him the Lamb of God, oversimplifying, of course. And then I like to think of him as coming back like a lion when you read Revelation, and the way the Catholic Church reads Revelation. One of the ways is that Jesus is going to come back like a warrior for all of us, right? So he's a sacrificial lamb. At one point, laid his life down so that we might have life, and was mocked and spit on and crucified the way that an animal would have been, and an innocent one. So that's why he's a lamb. And then come back, to bring us all away, to take us from Satan and bring us up to heaven. Ultimately, like a warrior, like a lion would do. And so it makes perfect sense theologically that way. You had to do one before the other. And I love it because, as you know, I'm a big Lions fan, and not just the Detroit Lions, but also I've had a fascination with lions my whole life. I just think they're a fascinating animal. Mane. They do, right?
No, you do.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. I love them, and the image. So then the imagery of because one of the things I love about lions is just the way they work together, the fierceness that they have. There's the male lion, really like the one that gets to stay in the tribe. Ultimately, the adult one is just he's the king. Like, it's one of the reasons they're called king of the jungle isn't just because they run the jungle as the species, but also because there's just like one adult male in the entire thing.
What song do you think about whenever you hear what you just said?
Which one?
Yeah.
What did I just say? Yeah, 100%. Which is a great song as well.
What's really funny is for the first time in my life, because of everything you just said, I pictured the end times whenever Jesus comes back as the Lion of Judah, and the angels are playing trumpets, right? He's coming with trumpet blasts, but that's what they're going to be playing on the trumpets.
Oh, I wish. It'd be so good.
That'd be great. Also,
amazing.
I love what you said, because that'd be the first time that the Lions win the championship, because Jesus, is coming back to take over, and he's going to win that battle. I'm just mad because I lost money on your Lions. They had a couple weeks ago. They had the number one offense, and so I bet on them, and then they scored 0 points. So it's my fault, I guess, that I bet on them.
It hurt me too.
I made your Lions lose. But here's the thing, and I think you're right. No, I know that you're right. Everything that you just said is correct. But I think where there's some nuance that I've been I think he was the Lion of Judah before he came here, right? So I think you're right. I think he came here to be the sacrificial lamb, and that when he comes back, he's the conquering Lion of Judah, right? But I think ultimately, we're mixing metaphors, but I think the lion came down, and he was always the conqueror. He's always God, right?
Sure.
So he lowered himself to become a lamb and to sacrifice himself. And then you're right, he does go back to being a lion, right? So I've been thinking about it a lot because we've been talking. You know, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying something that is true, but not fully the truth, right? They were leaving out a part of the truth that is also true. So we as Christians are supposed to be like Christ in as many ways as we possibly can, right? So if Jesus is able to balance this seeming dichotomy of being a lion and a lamb all at the same time, I think a cat dog. You remember that cartoon? Half lion, half lamb. You know? Cat dog, cat diggity dog. So all the old people and young people on the show are very confused, but the millennials know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So we are called to be like him in as many ways as we possibly can, right? So we are called to be lions and we are called to be lambs, right? And I was talking with somebody and they were very adamant. I was sharing about how we are all sheep. Like lay people in the church, we are sheep. We are followers. We are followers of God. We are called to follow our bishops. And like this person with some very well-meaning and maybe even correct pushback was like, bishops have let us down. Other leaders in the church have let us down. So I'm not going to be a sheep anymore. Like I can't see myself as a sheep and a follower anymore. I'm a co-conqueror. I'm a co-heir with Christ. I'm a warrior. I'm a battler, right? And nothing that she said was incorrect other than lacking the balance of we are sheep. We are followers, whether we like it or not. We are followers. Jesus is the shepherd, and he has put shepherds above us, whether we like it or not, right? So this whole submission to a shepherd, a God shepherd and human shepherds, it's like we have to do both, right? And I think some of us can, I think naturally, just because of disposition or upbringing or whatever, just who we are, can naturally go to either of those sides. I'm a lion. I'm a conqueror for God. I'm a fighter for God. And then other people, it's really much easier to be like, no, I'm a follower. I'm kind of more quiet. I'm going to kind of keep to myself. I'm going to pray. I'm going to take care of myself and not worry about what's going on out there. When I think if we're going to be like Christ, we have to be both. And I struggle. This person was struggling. I think a lot of people struggle with which one am I? And the answer is both, but that's hard.
Yeah, I think there's just times also in everyone's life you have to be both, right? And even in just specific examples where you're gonna there's times where you're gonna have to fight for the truth, and even if you're not, I think you and I would say that we're open to doing that whenever we need to, but and some people might be like, I don't know if I'd ever do that, but like we're all called to do that at some point, even if it's in a loving. It should always be done in a loving way, but sometimes in a bold way for sure. And then there's other times where we're called to be gentle, right? Like a lamb, and not just follow. Like you're right, of course, follow the teachings. You know, who hands down the teachings, but the Holy Spirit through the bishops. So and ultimately, if you're following the teachings, you're ultimately in a weird way following bishops who are following Christ. But there's also just in general, like we need to be like calm and loving in the face of crazy arguments, like a lamb. So I think there's a whole bunch of different ways we can look at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you pointed it out well for you and I think if we're going to err on either side, I think you and I would both err on the lion side, right? Like we're both pretty vocal about our faith. We've both worked in ministry. We know how to defend the truth and all this kind of stuff, right? And I know at least for me, like even as I'm saying this to this person, it's one of those moments where I'm saying something to somebody and it's piercing my own heart, right? Where it's like I have been hurt by leaders in the church, both locally and higher up that are further away from me, right? And there's just been so many stories of saints who, even when the saints were right and their bishop or their prior or their whoever was in charge of them, the head nun, the head brother, whatever, whoever's in charge of them, they still submitted to their authority because that authority was given to them by God, right?
Yep.
So because a bishop is incorrect, that doesn't take away the authority that's been granted to him by God. Because a priest is isn't doing what you want, that doesn't mean that he's not a priest of God, right? And that pierced me because I have struggled and been hurt by those people, right? But it's like, so seeing these saints and seeing Jesus be a lamb and be spit on and be led to slaughter as a lamb, it just really challenged me, as I was saying to this other person, who might even be further on the pendulum swing on the lion side than I am, but it still pierced my heart of like, man, I think I got to kind of get back to this. I think I need to be, at least recognize that I haven't been a sheep in a lot of those situations and find some balance there, right? That doesn't mean going all full sheep and being a doormat and being pushed over. The lion's still going to come out every now and then, right? But it's like finding that balance was just kind of challenging for me.
Yeah, and I do think there's also two ways to look at it. I think that you can, maybe I'm wrong here. I'm just thinking out loud because I haven't thought of this before. But I think that you can look one way theologically and another way just at how you're going to approach life. Like I think that it's okay for you and I to say, well, there's this organization. I'm definitely not endorsing them because I don't know a lot about them, but I do follow the leader on Instagram and just kind of like some of the things about them. There's some things I'm like, you're a Christian. You're claiming to be a Christian. You can't really say that about yourself. But it's called Lions, Not Sheep. And like I think in a professional world, looking at like I'm a lion, not a sheep, like I'm going to start my own trends and that kind of I think that's fine. But theologically, if he's going to claim to be a Christian, you gotta be like, no, you can be both, and we were kind of called to be both for sure. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know anything about this organization, but I think that organization is pointing towards something that I'm arguing against, right?
Yeah, but I think it's totally different things. One is it is a little bit because he claims to be Christian, it definitely does have that tone. But the way he looks at it, it's totally in just the business world.
Yeah,
like don't be a follower in the business world. Build your own path in the business world. But then as a Christian, we have to be both. So I can see someone who's non-religious be like, be a lion, not a sheep. Fine, whatever. But in a religious way, like disagree. You have to be. Also, this is why I think being Catholic is so incredible. Is that like you see what happens when somebody tries to live what I just set out in their theological world, and you get the rise and fall of Mars Hill. We have no accountability, no one that you have to submit to. Like submission is a good thing to authority. And I digress, but those are my interesting thoughts.
Yeah, and it's yeah. I think part of the issue is I don't think we can separate those two things. I don't think that I can be a lion and a lamb in my personal life and then only be a lion in the business world, right? And so I get there's positive things in what you said and what he has said, right? This lions over lambs guy or whatever. Like being a trendsetter and like going against the grain, like that's being a creative, like that stuff is good, right? But like that could also lead to like trampling over other people. And then if you're not bringing the sheep side
for sure
into like I've worked for years to have an integrated life, right? The place that I am the least integrated is sports. Like I was joking the other day, we have my son is playing in this like Catholic sports league or whatever. And another person who's pretty prominent in our faith community was sitting next to me at a football game on Friday night, the high school football game where they're all cheering on. And they're announcing that that for the Catholic thing that my son plays in, that like we're going to really focus on, I forget what it was, like faith tomorrow. That's going to be the virtue that we focus on. And we kind of looked at each other and kind of smiled. We're like, I don't think I want him to learn faith in football. I think I want him to learn like vengeance. Like you lost last week. Like you should go back and crush them, right? So that is like me in the sports world, 100% not bringing the lamb into it, right? Now, again, sports, there's aggression, just like in business. Business, it's going to tend towards one direction, right? But we can't just completely leave the land side. Otherwise, we get Mars Hill.
Yeah, you're right. And if you're going to, and one way I think you can integrate it is you smack the quarterback and sack him, you help him back up. You know what I mean? Like it's the play's over, help him up, get him again on the next play.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So any way that we can find integration in the whole of our life to be a lion or the lamb. The challenge for me this week is like, which way do I tend, and in what scenarios do I tend to be more lion or more lamb, and try to bring those two things together. And I think talking to you helped me kind of figure some of that out. It's like
Same, brother.
Taking the next step with you. So that's our show today, John. Thanks for being here.
Gosh, we did a great job during that interview too, didn't we?
Oh, dude, you didn't mess up once.
I know.
with our favorite priest, whose name is
Father Dave Dwyer.
From the Good Old Busted Halo Show. I want to thank him for coming on as well. John will be back next month. I will be back next week. See ya. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. We hope that you enjoyed it. We had a blast today. So I really hope that you felt that and had a blast as well. If you did enjoy today's show, make sure that you hit subscribe, especially over on YouTube, youtube.com/Forte Catholic. Not only do we have a weekly episode of this show every week, but we have just been pumping out videos over the last few weeks. Our Catholic Foundations course, we've got 7 of those 10. It's our Catholicism 101 series. So if you want to brush up on some of your Catholic theology, me and a couple of my friends are doing like Catholicism 101, just really diving into some of these things. So if you're new to Catholicism or you've been Catholic for forever and need a refresher because you haven't gone to CCE in 40 years, then check out those videos. We've also got some new videos in our A Catholic Perspective series. For spooky season, I recorded video reviews from a Catholic perspective on Morbius and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So check all of those videos out today at youtube.com/Forte Catholic, and we'll see you very, very soon. Love you.